welcome to our noon edition of Arirang News. Here are the stories making the headlines at this hour. From next Monday, professors at medical schools will reduce their working hours in protest against the government's push to increase the number of med school admission slots from 2025. A group of professors, though, say they could retract their intent to resign if the government is willing to negotiate. The U.S. Justice Department has filed a landmark lawsuit against Apple for allegedly illegally monopolizing the smartphone market and crushing competition. Apple has denied all claims and said it will fight accordingly. Israel says it has captured some 650 terror suspects and killed 140 gunmen in a raid on Gaza's largest hospital. The raid came as the Israeli military claimed that it received information that Hamas and others were using the Shifa hospital as a hideout to reorganize their battle lines. Medical professors have offered to take a step back from plans to resign next week in protest of an additional 2,000 med school slots being available from 2025. They say they're willing to reconsider their act of protest if the government is willing to negotiate. Officials have responded by saying it is open to communication and will also be deploying additional support to mitigate the medical staff shortages starting next Monday. Moon starts us off.
With medical professors also threatening to resign in protest of the government's plan to increase the number of medical students, the government is attempting to mitigate concerns over further medical staff shortages. Speaking at a meeting of the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters in Seoul on Friday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo announced that the government would be deploying an additional 247 military doctors and doctors from public health centers, starting next Monday to fill the empty slot left by the walkouts. And starting next month, a senior doctor support center within the National Medical Center will be opening to provide further support by hiring senior doctors near retirement. The Prime Minister also addressed the medical professors in a plea for them to reconsider their resignations and added that the government would continue close communication.
Government will continue to communicate with an open mind. Any suggestions that help protect public health will be reflected in the healthcare reform agenda without delay.
Calls for dialogue also seem to be growing within South Korea's medical community, with medical professors due to convene again on Friday afternoon before submitting their resignations next Monday. Speaking during an interview with a local broadcaster on Thursday, the head of a group of medical school professors hinted that the professors could sit down for talks with the government and even withdraw their resignations if punitive measures imposed on junior doctors are lifted. He also called for more objective data before increasing the medical school admissions quota.
We are not opposed to increasing the number of medical school admissions per se, but we think that it could be possible if an acceptable figure is obtained through objective verification. However, the government's plan to increase the quota by 2,000 is not objective data that any doctor can accept.
Meanwhile, the Medical Professors Association of Korea has announced that it would reduce the working hours of hospital professors to 52 hours a week starting next Monday. They will also minimize outpatient treatment starting in April. The decision was made to focus more on treating high-risk patients. Also starting next Monday, the government is set to begin suspending the licenses of trainee doctors.
Starting next week, the government will enforce license suspensions for doctors who have defied the return-to-work order.
The Health Ministry has issued prior suspension notices to about 5,000 trainee doctors who must submit their responses by next Monday. Moon, Arirang News.
Over to economics. South Korea's wholesale prices rose in February on the back of higher prices for fresh produce and manufactured goods. According to data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday, the producer price index was up 0.3% compared to January, rising for the third month straight. Agricultural goods were the main driver, with a lower supply of fruit pushing prices up. The prices of petroleum and metal products also jumped 0.5% in February compared to the month before. The Great Train Express, or GTX, is set to begin operations next week, bringing with it commute times of around 30 minutes to Seoul from the greater capital area. Our Park Gun-woo was on board to get the commuter experience.
Commuting to Seoul in just 30 minutes. A new high-speed train, the Great Train Express, or GTX, is preparing to begin operations, allowing people to reach Seoul City from the greater metropolitan area in about 30 minutes.
GTX's operation will bring innovation to our everyday lives in terms of transportation.
The new train network is one of the pledges made by the Yoon administration to reduce commuting times in the capital area, with 3 lines, A, B, and C, set to open. The A line is set to begin operating partially from March 30th. People using the GTX will be able to reach Seoul from metropolitan areas much quicker. Train journeys on the GTX A line running from Suseok, southern Seoul, to Dongtan in Gyeonggi-do province will only take about 20 minutes. The same trip by car or on other public transport takes over an hour. The government plans to fully open the A line that crosses Seoul from the south to the north earlier this year, along with the B and C lines in the next several years. An official from Korea National Railway said the government is cooperating with local governments so that rail networks can be extended to other regions outside the Seoul metropolitan area to create an economically hyper-connected area that cuts across various regions. The GTX runs at more than twice the speed of subway trains, reaching speeds of 180 kilometers per hour, meaning that at full capacity, 1,062 people on board can make it to their destinations quicker. This train will run 60 times a day from 5:30 a.m. to 1 a.m., with about a 20-minute interval between each departure. The seats are 3 centimeters wider than on regular subway trains, making for a more comfortable ride. And each carriage has an air purifier, along with eco-friendly carpet on the floor. According to the Transport Ministry, the fare from Suseok to Dongtan will be 4,451, which converts to $3.36 at the current rate. However, there have been some concerns about safety at GTX stations due to the greater volume of people that will come with the new service.
I am a bit worried because Suseok is already very busy as it is a transfer station with other high-speed trains and subways operating there as well.
Korea National Railway said it had already looked into safety concerns and used methods including simulations and is satisfied that there's no need to worry. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
The commander of U.S. Forces Korea says Washington is on the trajectory to complete the transfer of wartime operational control to Seoul. Speaking at a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing in Washington on Thursday, General Paul LaCamera said the U.S. is currently working on and moving forward with the transition. He stressed, however, that the transition is standards-based, not time-based. South Korea and the U.S. have long been putting efforts into the transfer of wartime conditions-based OPCON. Seoul handed over operational control of its military to the U.S.-led UN Command during the Korean War, which was then transferred to South Korea-U.S. Combined Forces Command. Over in Gaza, Israel says its military forces have captured some 650 terror suspects in a raid on Gaza's largest hospital, which also resulted in 140 gunmen being killed. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
The Israel Defense Forces and Shin Bet security agency said Thursday that 650 terror suspects were captured, including several very significant senior Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad commanders, during a massive raid at Gaza's largest hospital. It added that it also killed 140 gunmen during the raid. The announcement came on the 4th day of military operations at the Al-Shifa hospital, where Israel said it captured Hussam Salameh, the commander of PIJ's Observation and Intelligence Unit in Gaza, and his brother, Wissam Salameh, who is the head of the Islamic Jihad's propaganda unit in the region. The raid came as the Israeli military claimed that it had received information that Hamas and others were using the hospital as a hideout to reorganize their battle lines. However, Hamas accused Israel of killing dozens of displaced people, patients, and medical staff during the raid. IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari said no civilians, doctors, or medical personnel were hurt during the operation. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, during a joint press conference in Cairo with his Egyptian counterpart on Thursday, said that a major Israeli offensive in Rafah city is unnecessary and would be a mistake. The top U.S. envoy argued that such an operation would worsen the situation and that there's a better way to deal with threats posed by Hamas. Blinken added that while it looks difficult, a ceasefire agreement could be possible, as he noted that gaps are narrowing. The U.S. Department of Defense on Thursday announced that the defense chiefs of the United States and Israel will meet next week at the Pentagon. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant are expected to discuss the need to expand humanitarian aid to Palestinian civilians and ensure the safety of more than 1 million residents in Rafah. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The United Nations General Assembly on Thursday unanimously passed the first ever global resolution on artificial intelligence. This landmark resolution encourages countries to ensure the protection of human rights and personal data in the face of AI advancements. It also calls for continuous monitoring of AI technologies for potential risks. The non-binding agreement proposed by the U.S. was co-sponsored by 123 countries, including China. This action is part of a broader effort by governments worldwide to guide the development of AI responsibly. The U.S. Justice Department is accusing Apple of monopolizing the smartphone market and preventing competition. The lawsuit adds Apple to the list of tech giants targeted by government crackdowns. Shin Se-byuk with more.
The U.S. Justice Department, together with the District of Columbia and 15 U.S. states on Thursday, filed an antitrust lawsuit against Apple related to the company's iPhone. At a press briefing on Thursday, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland accused the tech giant of monopolistic practices in its iPhone sales.
That Apple has consolidated its monopoly power, not by making its own products better, but by making other products worse.
He highlighted two key issues. First, Apple's imposition of contractual restrictions and fees that limit what developers can offer iPhone users. And second, its selective restriction of access to the iPhone's operating system for third-party apps and accessories. Garland criticized Apple for limiting the functionality of competitor smartwatches and hindering messaging compatibility between iPhones and Android devices, claiming these actions contribute to an unfairly closed ecosystem. The Justice Department contends that Apple has intentionally made it difficult for users to switch from iPhones to other smartphones, effectively keeping them within its ecosystem. The Attorney General warned that if left unchallenged, Apple would only strengthen its monopoly, emphasizing that consumers shouldn't have to pay higher prices due to a company's violation of antitrust laws. Following the lawsuit, Apple issued a statement saying that the lawsuit threatens the core identity and unique principles that distinguish Apple products in highly competitive markets. The company also said that if the lawsuit is successful, it could stop the production of the kind of advanced and integrated products that people expect from Apple. It could also lead to significant changes across the company's ecosystem. This might include the reduction of developer fees, allowing third-party digital wallets more freedom, and enhancing compatibility with non-Apple devices and services, potentially altering how users interact with Apple products and services. Apple joins the list of other major tech giants in the U.S. to face comprehensive legal challenges from the government alongside Google, Meta, and Amazon. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
On Thursday, a senior U.S. official said that the latest move from key South Korean companies to reportedly stop selling used semiconductor chips and equipment to China was encouraging. This comes amid Washington's tightening export controls on key technologies amid a deepening Sino-U.S. rivalry. Lee Eun-jin reports.
U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security, Alan Estevez, said in a written statement to the House Committee on Foreign Affairs that it was encouraging to see allies and partners align with Washington amid rivalries between the U.S. and China and taking appropriate actions to address security concerns regarding semiconductors and other emerging technologies through their domestic legal systems. He was referring to the latest move from key South Korean companies, including Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, with the firms expressing intent to stop selling used semiconductor manufacturing equipment to China, and the governments of the Netherlands and Japan also announcing and implementing controls on such exports. Estevez also emphasized the importance of having parity between U.S. companies and companies of allied nations by upholding similar controls. It was also pointed out during the House hearing that the United States has been seeking controls on the servicing and supply of components for equipment that has already been sent to China before export restrictions were implemented. In a keynote speech at a South Korea-U.S. Economic Security Conference held in Washington in December, Estevez said that the U.S., South Korea, and other allies were in preliminary talks over the idea of creating a new export control system that would prevent cutting-edge technologies from being transferred to potential adversaries. He also highlighted that existing multilateral export control systems like the Wassenaar Arrangement were failing to keep pace with quickly changing technologies. 이은진, Arirang News.
The South Korean men's national football team's recent struggles continued on Thursday evening as the team settled for a 1-1 draw against Thailand. Playing in front of a sold-out Seoul World Cup stadium, Captain Son Heung-min opened the scoring with a left-footed shot from the center of the box, set up by midfielder Lee Jae-sung to make it 1-0 in the 42nd minute. But Thailand replied with a 62nd minute goal with Sufanat Muyenta poking in the equalizer from close range. South Korea remains top of their World Cup qualifying group with 7 points, while Thailand sits in second place with 4 points. The two teams play again on Tuesday in Bangkok at 7:30 p.m. local time. Today is World Water Day. Now, we all know how essential water is for life, but many are still suffering from a lack of clean water. Iani files this report.
The call to save water has almost become a cliché, with most people understanding the importance of water as a precious resource for life. But it's more than just simply using less water.
That's the reason why we have set up Sustainable Development Goal number 6, Water in Sanitation, which emphasizes the multi-phases role of water for socio-economic development, as well as environmental sustainability.
One of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is to ensure access to water and sanitation for all by 2030. Key steps include improving water use efficiency and enhancing international water cooperation.
So then we need to think about more broadly, not only about our own daily consumption, but also any kind of impact we are giving on the environment and human development as a whole.
The theme of this year's Water Day is Water for Peace, which is significant considering the impact of conflict on the water supplies of people living in war-torn regions due to contamination or even the complete destruction of water-related infrastructure. Humanitarian aid organization MEDER tells us more.
War in Ukraine has been going on for 2 years now, and from continuous shelling and airstrikes, the water infrastructures such as boreholes and pipelines they have been seriously damaged or completely destroyed.
In Gaza, UNICEF estimates that displaced children have access to only 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day, which falls below the recommended minimum requirement for survival of 3 liters per day. This means that people, especially children, are at risk of dying from related illnesses like serious diarrhea or malnutrition, even if they survive the fighting. There are also many other forgotten crises taking place around the world that receive less attention, such as conflicts in Syria, Sudan, and Yemen.
Every year, 30 million people flee their homes because of conflict or disaster, and these people often no longer have access to water sources and sanitation services, and they become vulnerable to epidemics.
What can we do to support those in need?
People can help other people who are suffering by simply sharing information about this issue. And people can also directly support the relief efforts on the ground by donating to an organization like MEDER.
World Water Day on March 22nd reminds us of the need to save water. Everybody has the right to safe, accessible drinking water, but not everyone is able to get it. Raising awareness is the first step toward helping others and protecting our environment. 이은희, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. At the EU summit in Brussels on Thursday, pro-nuclear European leaders and energy experts called for more nuclear energy use in Europe in a political push to revive the declining nuclear industry in the region. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stressed the urgency of combating climate change at the first ever nuclear energy summit, saying that the readily available source of low-emission electricity can help pave a cost-effective path to net zero. Von der Leyen also said that the future of nuclear energy depends on the industry's ability to deliver on time and on budget, adding that other potential avenues, such as decarbonize heat or to supply low-emission hydrogen, can help reach climate goals. The need to find alternatives to Russian gas and meet EU's climate targets is driving the renewed interest. In the US, a patient has received a transplant of a genetically modified pig's kidney, marking the first ever transplant of a gene-edited pig kidney into a living person. The patient is reportedly in recovery and expected to be discharged soon. Doctors at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston operated on the 62-year-old patient for 4 hours on Saturday. The patient, Rick Slayman, has been diagnosed with end-stage kidney disease and had been a patient in the hospital's transplant program for 11 years. Slayman, who suffered from diabetes and high blood pressure for many years, received his first kidney transplant from a human donor in 2018. Dr. Tatsuo Kawai, the surgeon behind the operation, said the pig organ was exactly the same size as a human kidney, saying that it was truly the most beautiful kidney I have ever seen. Doctors said that although Slayman's new pig kidney could last for years, many unknowns in animal organ transplant may result in the patient returning to dialysis if it fails. In India, thousands of Hindu devotees gathered to witness and celebrate the colourful ritual of the festival of Holi. In Varanasi city on Thursday, Hindu ascetics and priests threw ashes on the gathered crowd from the temple. This ritual, called Masan Holi, is because Lord Shiva, who grants eternal peace to the dead, is believed to play with Holi with pyre ashes. Crowds celebrated and danced to religious songs on the day that signifies the triumph of good over evil in Hinduism. The world's oldest living land animal, Jonathan the tortoise, has landed 2 spots in the Guinness World Records. The Seychelles giant tortoise is at least 192 years old, with his caretaker saying that age is a conservative estimate. Jonathan is the oldest living land animal and the oldest chelonian, a grouping of both tortoises and turtles. He lives on the remote island of St. Helena, famously known as the site of Napoleon Bonaparte's exile. Jonathan's caretaker, Teeny Lucy, who's been on the duty for over a decade, said that Jonathan is an enigmatic tortoise who's met many of the British royal family. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The weather is changeable these days and we need an umbrella today. Rain will start from western regions from the mid-afternoon before gradually spreading east. From tonight into tomorrow at dawn, it will rain heavily in central parts of the country along with thunderstorms. Making matters worse, the rain could be mixed with lingering yellow dust in the air. After a chilly start, temperatures will jump this afternoon despite the showers, topping out at 16 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Then it will be even warmer at the weekend, topping out at 21 degrees on Sunday, but the south coast and Jeju Island will be rainy throughout the weekend. Strong winds continue today with a dry advisory in Gyeongsang-do provinces still in place, and it should start to rain tonight in that area. Meanwhile, afternoon highs will be 2 to 8 degrees higher this afternoon, topping out at 20 degrees Celsius on Jeju Island. There is a chance of more rain early next week in the capital, but morning temperatures should turn much warmer. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you at this hour. We'll bring you more updates from Korea and around the world at the same time next week.